They made magic look effortless. But behind the laughs, Bewitched hid a world of pain secrets and shattered dreams. From fame to heartbreak, scandal to silent sacrifice, the cast lived stories far darker than the show ever revealed. And in 2026, their real endings feel more haunting than any spell Samantha ever cast. Number 1. Elizabeth Montgomery. Before she became the woman who could stop time with a twitch of magic, Elizabeth Montgomery was already Hollywood royalty. The daughter of legendary actor-director Robert Montgomery, she walked into Bewitched with elegance, discipline, and far more depth than television ever fully used. On screen, Samantha Stevens looked like the perfect suburban dream. But behind that sparkling charm was a woman carrying the weight of fame, marriage, motherhood, and an industry that kept mistaking her lightness for simplicity. What made Elizabeth unforgettable was not just the famous nose twitch the world copied for years. It was the emotional intelligence behind it. She made Samantha feel warm, witty, loving, and quietly powerful. While the series turned her into a pop culture icon, real life kept moving fast. She married 4 times, raised 3 children, and gave pieces of her real life to the show, even writing her pregnancies into Samantha's story. Beyond the spotlight, she was also known for courage, later becoming a vocal supporter of gay rights, when doing so still carried real risk. Elizabeth Montgomery died on May 18, 1995, at just 62, and that is what makes her story so moving. America remembered the witch. But the woman behind her was far more extraordinary, a graceful star with dramatic talent, private strength, and a heart much bigger than the role that made her famous. Number 2. Dick York. To millions of viewers, Dick York was the perfect Darren Stevens, sharp, lovable, funny, and endlessly believable as the ordinary man trapped inside an extraordinary marriage. He had the kind of screen presence that made comedy feel natural, never forced. But long before Bewitched turned him into a household name, real tragedy had already entered his life. A severe back injury during a film shoot left him in relentless pain, and that pain followed him onto the set every single day. On camera, he looked light, polished, and in control. Off camera, he was fighting just to keep going. The medication that once helped him function slowly became another burden, and the cheerful rhythm audiences loved was being carried by a man whose body was quietly breaking down. Through all of it, Joan Alt, the childhood sweetheart he married in 1951, stayed by his side. Together, they raised 5 children, while his health, career, and stability began slipping away. Then came the collapse that ended his run on the show and changed everything. Yet the most moving part of Dick York's life came after the spotlight dimmed. He got sober, turned toward faith, and dedicated himself to helping homeless Americans through charity work. He died on February 20th, 1992, at 63 years old. What remains unforgettable is not only the husband. America laughed with each week, but the man who endured enormous pain and still chose compassion in the end. Number 3. Dick Sargent. By the time Dick Sargent entered Bewitched, the role was already loaded with history pressure and impossible expectations. Replacing a familiar face on a beloved show is hard enough. Replacing one in the middle of a hit series is something else entirely. Viewers noticed everything. They compared tones, mannerisms, chemistry, even the smallest expressions. And still, Sargent walked into that fire with grace, giving Darren a smoother, calmer presence that slowly became part of the show's final years. Off-camera, his life demanded a different kind of endurance. Hollywood in those years was merciless to anyone who stepped outside the image it wanted to sell. And for Dick Sargent, that meant burying a central truth about himself. He was gay, and silence became part of survival. While magazines and studio publicity pushed polished illusions, he guarded his private world carefully, knowing honesty could cost him the career he had fought to build. That kind of loneliness does not leave visible scars, but it changes a life all the same. Then much later, he finally stepped into the open. In 1991, Dick Sargent publicly came out during a gay rights parade in Los Angeles, with Elizabeth Montgomery proudly beside him. It was not framed like a scandal or confession. It felt like release. He died on July 8, 1994, at 64 years old. What stays with people now is more than the actor who became the second Darren. It is the image of a man who spent years being measured against others only to become most powerful when he finally chose to be himself. Number 4. Agnes Moorehead. Power entered the room the second Agnes Moorehead appeared on screen. As Endora, she did not simply play Samantha's mother. She ruled every scene with elegance, mischief, and the kind of authority that could cut through a room before she even spoke. By the time Bewitched began, Moorehead was already a performer of enormous stature with acclaimed film work, major stage experience, and a reputation built far beyond sitcom television. That is part of what makes her presence feel so electric. She carried the weight of a grand actress into a world of suburban comedy and somehow made it feel effortless. There was, however, a deeper irony in her story. Agnes reportedly saw Bewitched as work taken more for financial stability than artistic fulfillment. She did not view the show with the reverence audiences eventually would, and yet no trace of that distance ever appeared in her performance. Endora was flamboyant, sharp, theatrical, hilarious, and impossible to ignore because Agnes gave her everything. Her private life was far less enchanted. 2 unhappy marriages, painful family fractures, and years of guarded privacy shaped a life that seemed much more solitary than the dazzling figure viewers adored each week. When she died of uterine cancer on April 30, 1974, she was 73 years old. Looking back now, her story carries a strange kind of heartbreak. Here was a woman of extraordinary craft, immense discipline, and undeniable brilliance giving unforgettable life to a role she may never have considered worthy of her. Yet that is exactly what makes Agnes Moorehead so moving. Even when her heart may not have belonged fully to the material, her talent never once held back. Number 5. Marion Lorne. Gentleness can be its own kind of magic, and Marion Lorne proved that every time Aunt Clara floated into Bewitched. She did not need grand entrances or sharp one-liners to own the moment. A misplaced spell, a confused expression, a soft voice trembling through another magical disaster, that was enough. There was something deeply human in the way she played Clara, as if warmth itself had wandered into the show. And what made it even more remarkable was this: while audiences assumed they were watching an elderly actress in her late 60s or 70s, Marion Lorne was already in her 80s, still delivering delicate physical comedy with grace that never asked for applause. Her story carries the quiet dignity of another era. She had spent years on stage and screen before Bewitched, building a long career shaped by patience rather than spectacle. In her personal life, she shared a real creative partnership with British playwright Walter Hackett, the one great love of her life. After his death in 1944, she remained a widow for decades. No children, no public reinvention, no dramatic search for a second act. By the time she became Aunt Clara, she brought with her the emotional texture of a woman who had lived fully lost, deeply, and learned how to make fragility feel beautiful rather than sad. Then came the ending no script could soften. Marion Lorne died on May 9, 1968, at 84 years old, and the show chose not to recast Aunt Clara, which feels right even now. Some characters belong too completely to the soul that created them. Months later, she was awarded an Emmy for the role, but she never lived to hear her name called. That detail alone is enough to break your heart. The industry finally said, "Well done," only after the woman who earned it was already gone. Number 6. David White. Success gave David White a polished television life. As Larry Tate, he became the perfectly smug advertising boss. Brisk, amusing, self-important, and somehow always entertaining instead of cruel. Week after week, he added comic precision to Bewitched, turning a supporting role into one of the show's most dependable pleasures. He understood exactly how to play a man who could steal credit bark orders and still leave the audience smiling. That balance is harder than it looks, and David made it seem effortless. Away from the camera, his life carried much heavier notes. His first wife, actress Mary Welch, died young from complications during pregnancy, leaving him to raise their son Jonathan with a grief no sitcom world could ever touch. He eventually remarried and rebuilt a family, but some losses do not disappear. They simply settle into the walls of a life. Years later, another blow arrived with almost unbearable cruelty. Jonathan White was killed in the Pan Am Flight 103 bombing over Lockerbie, Scotland, in December 1988. He was only 33. For David, that tragedy did not just wound the heart of a father. It changed the shape of everything that came after. David White died on November 27, 1990. He was 74 years old and had lived through a sorrow most people could scarcely imagine surviving. That is why his story hits so deeply now. On television, he represented control, confidence, and comic authority. In real life, he endured loss upon loss with quiet dignity. The man who played Larry Tate made millions laugh, but the father behind the role carried one of the saddest endings in the entire Bewitched legacy. Number 7. Erin Murphy. Not every child star grows up fighting the shadow of the role that made them famous. Erin Murphy did something rarer. She embraced it. As little Tabitha Stevens, she brought a spark to Bewitched that felt effortless, sweet, mischievous, and just magical enough to make the audience believe Samantha's daughter could one day outshine everyone around her. What most viewers never realized was that Tabitha was actually played by Erin and her twin sister Diane, quietly alternating on set, while television preserved the illusion of one unforgettable child. That secret alone gives her story a strange Hollywood charm, but Erin's real life became even fuller than her early fame suggested. She went on to build a family, raise 6 sons, and move through adulthood with a steadiness many former child actors never find. Life also gave her a deeper purpose when her son Parker was diagnosed with autism. Instead of retreating from public life, she turned that experience into advocacy, using her voice to support autism awareness with the same warmth that once made Tabitha so beloved. By 2026, Erin Murphy stands as one of the brightest endings in the entire Bewitched story. While so many cast histories are marked by illness, grief, secrecy, or loss, hers carries something beautifully different: survival with grace. She did not become a tragedy, a cautionary tale, or a faded memory from old television. She became something far more moving, proof that sometimes the child at the center of the magic really does grow up and keep the light. Number 8. Alice Ghostley. Some actors do not enter a scene, they drift into it, strange and unforgettable, as if they belong to a world slightly different from everyone else. That was Alice Ghostley. When she joined Bewitched as Esmeralda, she brought a nervous, offbeat energy that made every moment feel charmingly unstable. Her magic never seemed fully under control, and that was exactly why she worked. In a series built on polished supernatural elegance, Alice gave the show something messier, softer, and wonderfully human. Long before television audiences knew her face, she had already built serious credibility on the stage. Alice was a Tony-winning actress with talent far greater than the small comic roles Hollywood often handed her. Yet there was no bitterness in the way she performed. She had the rare ability to make awkwardness feel graceful and eccentricity feel deeply lovable. Off-screen, her life was marked by something rare in this cast-lasting devotion. Her marriage to actor Felice Orlandi endured for 50 years, a quiet partnership built far away from scandal noise or self-promotion. Her later success on Designing Women reminded a wider audience of what had always been true. Alice Ghostley was never just a supporting player. She was one of those performers who could change the texture of an entire scene with a single look or line reading. She died on September 21, 2007, at 84 years old. What makes her story linger is not tragedy alone, but the feeling that Hollywood never fully had a category for what she was. Character actress was the label. Irreplaceable was the truth. Number 9. Kasey Rogers. Stepping into an established role is difficult. Stepping into one while being styled to resemble the woman before you is something close to invisible pressure. That was the position Kasey Rogers faced when she took over as Louise Tate on Bewitched. At first, the production even placed her in a dark bouffant wig to soften the transition, as though the audience might accept her more easily if she looked less like herself. But Kasey did what strong performers often do in those situations. She stayed steady, found her rhythm, and gradually made the part her own. There was resilience in that journey, and it reflected the life she built away from the camera. Before television fully embraced her, she had already appeared in memorable screen work, including Alfred Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train. Later, beyond Bewitched, she carved out something even more personal, a second act as a writer. Married to press agent Walter Bud Lewis and raising 4 children, Kasey grounded her life in family while turning her connection to the show into something lasting, even co-authoring books that kept its world alive for devoted fans. She was not merely passing through television history, she was helping preserve it. Her final years carried hardship, but also unmistakable determination. Even while battling throat cancer, she continued showing up for the legacy she had helped build, traveling in 2005 for the Elizabeth Montgomery statue dedication, while still in treatment. Kasey Rogers died on July 6, 2006, at 80 years old. What makes her story moving is the quiet strength inside it. She was asked to blend in, to transition smoothly, to support someone else's world, and in the end, she left behind a presence that was entirely her own. Number 10. Alice Pearce. Neighborhood comedy has rarely hidden so much courage. As Gladys Kravitz's Alice Pearce became the woman no one believed, the frantic witness next door, forever spotting the impossible and sounding just unhinged enough for everyone to dismiss her. She made suspicion funny, irritation lovable, and disbelief into an art form. Every glance through the window, every panicked reaction, every exasperated cry felt perfectly tuned. Gladys could have been a one-note nuisance in lesser hands. Alice turned her into one of the show's most memorable forces. By the time Bewitched began, Alice Pearce already knew she was dying. She had been diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer in 1963 and was reportedly given only months to live. Yet she kept working. She showed up, delivered exquisite comic timing, and never allowed the role to collapse under self-pity or visible pain. Her personal life carried tenderness, too. After losing her first husband, she later married Broadway director Paul Davis, who would stand beside her through the hardest chapter of all, giving care where the world only saw applause. Alice Pearce died on March 3, 1966, at just 48 years old, not long after she was awarded an Emmy for her work on Bewitched, a recognition that arrived too late for her to fully receive it herself. That detail stays with you. So does the image of a woman making America laugh while quietly facing the end of her own story. Gladys Kravitz was always the one who saw what others refused to see. In the end, Alice Pearce gave that character something even deeper, the dignity of strength without announcement. Number 11. Mabel Albertson. Certain faces were born to play disapproval, and Mabel Albertson turned that gift into an art. As Phyllis Stevens Darren's sharp-tongued, ever-unimpressed mother, she brought a perfect blend of irritation, timing, and social polish to Bewitched. She never needed to dominate a scene to control it. A look aside, a clipped line to Frank, and suddenly the entire mood shifted. What made her so effective was precision. She understood exactly how far to push a difficult mother-in-law before the character stopped being funny, and she never crossed that line. Her career had already traveled through vaudeville, radio, stage, and film long before sitcom audiences came to know her. Mabel belonged to an older generation of performers who learned to command attention without waste, and that discipline stayed with her. Off-screen, her life was tied to another remarkable acting legacy through her younger brother, Jack Albertson, one of the most respected character actors of his time. Family remained a meaningful part of her world, even as age began to narrow it. Then came the cruel fading brought by Alzheimer's, a long and painful decline that slowly dimmed a woman once known for such crisp presence. She died on September 28, 1982, at 81 years old, only months after her brother Jack. Their ashes were later scattered into the Pacific Ocean, a final image both simple and strangely beautiful. Mabel Albertson may not be the first name audiences remember from Bewitched, but her story stays with you. She was one of those performers who made every scene sturdier, sharper, and more alive just by being there.